Hey, it's Marshall Ting with your Superior Ag Insurance Ringside report for this past week, the week of January 16th through the 22nd. Now, before we get started, I've had something burning on my mind here the last little bit, and I want to do a quick poll to everybody watching. So, if you will, roll for me really fast. If anybody out there is loving feeding in snow, loving busting ice, loving busting out and thawing out waters, if you will, please raise your hand. Yep, that's what I figured. Every one of us is pretty daggone tired of this winter, or at least want a break from it. You know, we've had, this past week, we had snow starting off, then we had floods and rain, and then we come back to more snow, and snow and ice is still here, or at least it is at my house. So that's had a huge impact on your market this past week. You know, a lot of places had some really, really small runs down in the hundreds, and some of them even under 100. And that's had a big effect on your market that we'll get to here in a second. But as a whole, we sold 10,132 head of cattle for the week across the state of Kentucky, which is actually pretty good considering all the winter weather and mix that we've had. That's going to be 10,000 than it was last week, and 5,000 less than it was this time last year. But your feeder cattle market's still pretty good. Your feeder steers this week are going to be steady to $5 higher. Your feeder heifer cattle market this week is going to be steady to $4 higher. So good demand on those cattle. The biggest thing that we're seeing in that is your spreads. So a lot of these spreads in your ranges are going to have anywhere from 35, 45, up to 50 cent spread on that. And the biggest thing we need to keep in mind when looking at these numbers is going to be the fact that whether those cattle are weaned, pre-vaccinated, and rock and roll ready, if they're right off the mama cow. And that has a huge effect. You know, we've all tried to start a load of calves out here in the winter weather, and they all end up humped up against the fence and hating life, and you better go ahead and get your dart gun out or get ready to get on the four-wheeler and take them to the barn, because they're going to need a little bit of love. So let's get back to talking about our cattle. Some big spreads on these deals, but the top end on these markets are really, really high right now. So let's go over your feeder steers. So on your full weight feeder steers, you're looking at a range of $1.58 all the way up to $2.10. Which a 210 on a full weight steer is really good and really promising. I'd say most of your average on those will be somewhere around that $1.80 to $1.85 range. Now on your 5 weights, you're looking at a range of 145 up to 189. But I'd say most of those are going to be caught somewhere in that 175 to 180 range. On your 6 weights, 135 to 168 is a top. And I'd say most of those could be bought and caught right there in that mid $1.50 range. So $1.50, $1.52, somewhere around in there. Now, let's talk about our loads. Loads this week were almost non-existent. And that's just to be expected because we've had so much snow and then mud and then ice. It just made it hard to get those big sets of cattle out of the fields, now the barns. But the ones we did have come to town did trade quite well. So let's go over your steer cattle. Here's 62 of these. These are going to be black baldy steers, 818 pounds on the average at 157.50. Here's another set, just a little bit heavier, but still on your 8 weights. Here's 56 head of these. These are all black, 894 pounds on the average. They're going to be 147.75. And then another set of these are going to be a big set of heavy steers. Now, they average to 1,219 pounds on the average. 97 head of them, all black, $1.35 was a trade on those. Now, on your heifer cattle, didn't really have any loads of those, but we did have one big set of them. These are on your heifers. Here's 47 head of these. These are going to be all black heifers, 581 pounds on the average at 146.75. So a nice trade there on those. Now, your cattle on feed report came out on the 21st, and it's pretty bearish. The numbers that are in placement, numbers marketed, is exceeded over what they were predicting. But you kind of don't have anything else to expect but that. You know, your placements are up, but you got to remember too, a lot of these places that are raising these cattle and your big feeding states are in a drought. So if you don't have any forages for them, you don't have any stocks for them, you don't have anything to do but put them on feed. So we have 12 million head of cattle on feed right now, and you had 1.86 million of those cattle marketed this past year, which is above what we had in 2020, and which would make it the second highest since this thing started back in '96. So that's a good sign there. Now, as far as your cattle placed on feed, like I said, there's a whole lot more on there. You're actually at 106% over last year and over what they predicted on that. And then your fed cattle sold, you're 100% over. So that's pretty bearish on both of those numbers right there. Now, your cattle on feed as of January 1st was also 100% over what they predicted on that deal. So it's a pretty bearish market going on right now, and I think that's having a huge effect on your futures board coming up. If you checked your futures board this morning, both on your fed cattle and your live cattle, your feeder cattle and your live cattle, both of them are in the red, as long as the list will go down. So just kind of keep that in mind. So let's talk about these futures and everything, all this volatility going on. So right now would be a great time to invest in an LRP policy, a livestock risk protection policy. It's $2.10 on some 4-weight cattle coming in. That's a lot of risk. What a great time to go ahead and lock in some of these numbers and kind of give yourself a little bit of peace of mind and a little bit to be rest assured upon as we go into this spring and everything turn them out. So if you're interested in the LRP policy, a livestock risk protection policy, feel free to reach out to Ian Thomas, Superior Ag Insurance, Ian Thomas, 859-613-2453. Or hey, don't forget you can also reach out to our newest member on the team here, Mr. Damon Reed. He's right there out of that Madison County area. He can be reached at 859-200-9188. So as always, thank you so much for your business. If there's anything we can do to help you with your livestock production insurance or your crop production insurance needs, feel free to give us a shout. Or check us out on the website, www.superioragins.com. Thank you so much. Stay warm. We'll see you next week.